Hiya, friends. Anna Sabramowitz here, and I wanted to talk to you about stories today because one of the things I'm noticing is that we have this, we're seeing the top trends lists and all this stuff, and it's all micro learning and personalized learning and all these things. But really, when you think about it, the fact that we are creatures wired for story, creatures wired for to remember things through stories, I think that if we're talking about trends, let's just go back to the basics. Let's go back to what's actually super awesome and working, and we need to get good at it instead of jumping on like the AI train or something, and actually start incorporating and getting good at stories so that we can start using those stories to engage our learners, to help them discover a different perspective and potentially motivate them to take action after the e-learning's over to actually learn some more. So what I wanted to do is actually apply the three elements of a good story to something that's already been done, and just so I can maybe expose you to something interesting, something that might inspire you to take action, and maybe to one of the things I feel would work would be to take these things, and every time you have a positive experience with a story, with a movie, with anything, think about how these three elements have been combined to make a good experience for you. And on the flip side, if there is an experience that you've had that should have been perfect but didn't touch you, now you'll know why, and it'll inform your designs. So, as you know, I love scenarios, but also I believe that a scenario is nothing if it's got, either terrible context, poor consequences, poor options that are too evident. But also, one of the things, as learning designers, we have to take into consideration is that the people that are coming into our learning, I'm going to say this, I've probably said it a million times, they're not interested in what we're trying to sell them. They're not interested in our design. They're not interested in our intent because it is ours, it is not theirs. So stories help that intent become theirs because they're maybe recognizing it through the story of somebody else, through somebody else's journey, and a journey that they can relate to, and a journey that maybe they want to aspire to be on as well. So the three elements of a story are character, desire, they must want to do something, have something, be something, and conflict. There must be something in their way. So what I wanted to do is show you a story right now that the Red Cross has used to probably, if anything, bring awareness to... And awareness is such a soft thing, right? I mean, does awareness create change? I don't know. But what I know is that if a story creates awareness and you can maybe back it up with some decision making in a real scenario that you've augmented it with, that might be more powerful than giving somebody a list of stuff that's happened and expecting them to be like, oh, that's very interesting. I'll go and do something about it now. So the story is called Over, Under, Sideways, Down, and it is the story of a young man, or young boy who is forced to become a man through the things that happen to him. He escapes a place. He's a teenage refugee, and basically the story is about him at 15 being cast out of his home, going through some horrendous experiences, arriving in the UK, going through some more experiences, and finally being able to do what he loves, which is to go to school and not be afraid for his life anymore. Now, the story itself is really beautifully done as far as, not when I say beautifully, this isn't meant to be like, I don't think it's supposed to be pretty. I think what this is supposed to do is set a mood. And the mood is that of one of darkness, fear, despair, and tragedy. So what happens is that one of the things that this story does very well, though, is it it's it makes us connect with Ibrahim, who loves his parents, loves school, lost his dad when he was very young and blocked that out. He has a scar on his leg, which he associated with the death of his father, because it was one of it says it was the same shower of bullets that killed his father. So what happens is, in the very beginning of the story, it takes some time. We're building up the character. We're figuring out who this young boy is and all the things that he's been through. And through it, we also recognize things that that mean a lot to him. And those things are things that would mean a lot to anybody, like family, the connection with your mom, being told to leave the house when you don't want to, losing a family member, loving school, not being able to go, being afraid for your life, being afraid of where you're going to sleep. So all those things create that character. Now, his desire is really, and it's not necessarily blatantly expressed in this story, but you can do that. You can actually be very, you don't have to be so poetic. You can actually be very explicit, saying, one day I'm going to win, be able to go back home, or one day I'm going to see my mom, or one day I'm going to have, I'm going to drive a hot red Corvette down the driveway past my bully's house. Whatever that is, it has to be very clear in the person's mind. And here we see that his struggle is really just to be safe. And there's other things. I think it's about connection, and we see that through Ibrahim's journey. Now, the other piece, which is I think very important and really good stories have, and I've learned this from Ryan Martin. He's the one who's actually really embracing story. I'll link to his video underneath this one. He actually deconstructs those little story elements in several videos. But one of the things is that you notice that a good story, you start with the character, build them up. What's the reality? They go through this journey. They have a goal. They have a desire. Now, with it, you can't. He's had a horrendous journey, but the thing is that once he arrives in the UK, there is this kind of point where you're like, oh look, he's arrived. Everything's okay now, and we get made to feel that everything is okay for just a second, and then, or we assume that because he's now in a safe place. The UK. It's different than where he came from. But then again, what happens is now this conflict, very difficult conflict, is revealed. All of his ID was taken away from him. He has no way to identify who he is. He has no way to prove his age. They don't believe him. So what happens is all of a sudden, in this place where he's supposed to be safe, there's now additional conflict. And that's the conflict that he must overcome. It's almost greater than, or it's a new conflict. It's just as strong almost as the other one, because now he doesn't exist in the eyes of the government of the UK. He's not a person because he has no ID, he has no proof, he has no relatives, nothing. He's invisible. And so, if anything, that story that we're watching and that we're going through here, this is the story of that what happens is, it's not necessarily this journey we're saying, oh, this is a horrible thing, but now what I think the Red Cross is trying to do is just actually show that when these people arrive and they're looking for asylum, the process is so very, very difficult. And that's, and I mean, what happens is, it's through that story and the continued conflict and him overcoming that conflict that we get to connect with him. And what I think is also one of the most powerful things is that we realize that Ibrahim is actually a real guy. And we learn a little bit about what he does as a result when he actually gets, his chance to give back and his chance to connect with other people. So when you think about, developing these stories for yourself, you're actually developing them for your learners. Think about how you can use these three elements: character, desire, and conflict. And if you don't have those three, like an obstacle that somebody needs to reach, then it's not going to work. It's not going to resonate. And the other thing I want you to also consider is that you can't have a general human being that does general things and has general conflicts. You have to imagine a person. And I bring this back to, I just had a really great conversation with somebody about stories. And one of the things that you have to think about is that your stories need to be specific because you can only connect with one person at a time. And if you can create a story from the perspective of a person, see how it resonates with other people, maybe add details. People love details. People love the granularity of saying things like, and the blanket had a little hole in it where a little mouse had chewed 5 years before. All these little details, they help you remember. They also help you believe. And so the more we can add these details and set them up as the journey that our scenario is supposed to take our learner through, the more we get to persuade them that the ideas that we're trying to share are beneficial to them. So I hope you check this out. Just work through it yourself. So it's basically Google, look over, under, sideways, down. It's called Refugee Week Comic. And there's also a couple of really great TED Talks about it. I'll link to this in the comments in the below section. Also, if you like this stuff, if you found it interesting, please leave me a comment, because that's how you let me know that you found this valuable and that you want to see more. Also, like and subscribe so you can see more of this stuff. And I will talk to you next time. Enjoy.